we have students, obviously they're from all around the world, but they're also doing all different types of subjects. Now, when you're in the middle of APM or audit and assurance, whatever your subject is, you think there's some magic. So surely there's something you can tell me about audit and assurance is magic, and something you can tell me about APM that there's a magic way of passing. And I kind of think, well, actually the simple exam technique advice applies to all subjects. And if you can follow 2 or 3 key things and apply it to all your exams, you'll actually increase, a bit like the professional skills, and we talked about the EPSM. So what are those 2 or 3 tips that nearly no matter what subject you're doing, you would encourage people to do, maybe in advance of their exam or when they start their exam on the day?
Okay, no, really good question, that. The first thing is, between the date of where we're currently at, so say as at today, versus count the number of days you've got up until your exam on there, and just have a sit down on your work calendar, your family calendar, your other commitments, what you've got going on. And first of all, you've got to ask yourself, well, what is my available time between now and when I will be sat there in the exam hall, or if you're doing the computer-based exam on there? That's the first thing, because then you start to allocate day by day and say, right, I've got 2 hours today here, maybe only 1 available here, I've got a free Saturday. And then you can actually start to position and say, well, what free time have I got around it? And then you say, well, that's the first thing. Then the second thing is, when do you actually study best? Because every student is different. Mine was always first thing in the morning. I've got loads of energy, and I can get quite a lot of things done, and I get the tasks that I really didn't want to do done first thing, which comes on to the next point of past papers as well. We used to always do past papers in the morning when I've got the most amount of energy, and also to time. So speakers like Jordan Peterson are massive advocates for plans, because by having a plan and the allocated time, you have the day that you wanted to have. And if you write it down, pen and paper, you start to check it off, just like Jim Rohn, all the speeches I listen to him on him, and you feel good at the end of the day. You say, look, this is what I wanted to happen, and this is what did happen. And you feel good for it, and you think, yeah, let's go again tomorrow. So those would be my first definite tips on there. What do you think to that, Alan?
I think that's great. I think it's all about motivating yourself. It's all about kind of those little wins. And I think sometimes you can look 6 weeks, oh, my exam's in 6 weeks. It's in 5 weeks and 4 days. What do I do? What do I do? But actually, if you plan your week and then you plan your days within that week, don't look too much further than that. The rest of the weeks will look after themselves. But if you can get your week planned and then your day planned, and like you, James, I'm a morning person. Past 6 o'clock in the evening, I don't want to do anything. But I'd be quite happy getting up at 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. and studying for a while, and I'd feel good. And I think it'll set your day up. But again, at the end of the week, if you've got lots of ticks beside all of your work or all of your plans, and you've achieved that, and it won't always go perfectly, but if you can achieve 80 or 90% of what you set out to achieve at the beginning of the week, that's a good week.
Oh, yeah.
If you can get that momentum, I think momentum and motivation are nearly the 2 most important words for ACCA students. If you can get momentum in your study, if you can keep yourself motivated, they're the 2 things that's what will get you to the exam. It's not about how much you remember or how many questions you practice. That will come as part of that momentum you're building up.
And just to add to that as well, because obviously I'm on my phone today, we're doing this recording. The next thing is distractions. The world is full of distractions, Alan, as you and I both know on here. You just need to, I used to have my phone on airplane mode. If I needed to make a call to anyone, I'd let them know. But at the end of the day, you just have to focus in and treat the revision sessions like it was the real exam, that I've only got a certain amount of time, I'm doing these times as we go through. That's the first thing. And then secondly is your working environment on there. Now, obviously, you can see into my glamorous world here that there are not too many distractions in my world as to it. So I focus in and just try and laser in on what I've got to do, when I've got to do it, and I do it to the best of my ability on there. So I look back at the end of the day and go, oh, I've emptied the tank today. I couldn't have done any more. It's the same for everyone on this call right now. Like we're saying, revising in the morning, revising in the evening, whatever it may be. I used to go down to a library after work because I was tired, And we've all been there. You finish up after work, you just want to sit on the sofa or just lie on your bed or play on your phone, and you go, oh my word, this is not going to happen. So I thought, right, I'm going to go sit around people who are already working on there in a quiet environment. And then, you know, you're looking at someone across the table and you think to yourself, oh my word, they're working. They are here to work. I mean, oh yeah, I'm here to work. Right, let's put the phone away. I know I'm tired, but I'm going to get stuck in as best I can. And the other option is studying from home, which I know quite a lot of students are in that ballpark of doing, or I know quite a lot of students actually go to their office earlier and then will sit down in a different room at work and then just study for 45 minutes before they start their work. So little things like that to consider, that the sacrifice of just getting up that bit earlier could be another question or two in the bank that could really help you out. So little things like that I would think could be definitely applied to people on this call today.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that, and you mentioned it, is time. It's kind of putting yourself under that pressure from the very beginning. For you, James, was how students kind of search for tips on exam papers and looking for tips and trying to figure out what's coming up in the exam. And you'll never know. And I know lots of lecturers who will say, here's what I think is coming up in the AFM exam. And they could list 3 or 4 topics. And you know what? They're probably right, because the same 3 or 4 topics come up quite regularly in AFM. But because of the scenario, they don't come up the same way. There's 100 different variations of how futures and forwards could come up in AFM. It's guaranteed nearly that futures and forwards will play some role in your AFM exam. But will it be theoretical? Will it be taking over a company? Will it be stock issues? Will it be anything? And I think that's why understanding is more important than memorizing, because most the examiners' reports, if you read them, they'll always say students were answering the questions they wanted to answer. And just like what you said, they put in, I've memorized IFRS 16 and I saw IFRS 16 in the question, so I'm just going to tell you everything I know and hope for the best. Whereas the real answer was probably a third of the length and much easier than what you actually did in the exam.
Yeah, spot on. I agree with you. I fell into that trap when I did advanced audit and assurance, where I just trying to memorize as much as I could with a bit of application, but I just wasn't specific enough. So to the person who wrote the query about audit and assurance, it's understanding the ethical concepts for them, understanding what the audit process is, and then finding out which stage you are currently at in analysing on there as well. Again, applying back to the scenario, and just little things that I found that helped me in audit and assurance was even just writing down the company name within my answer. It really helped me to focus in on what I was trying to actually picture in my mind and then get it down onto paper for the marks. That was the key thing on there.